to the latest installment of SLM Live. My name is Veronica Theodoro, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Design STL. Joining me today are 6 members of the St. Louis interior design community, each of whom represents a distinct faction of our industry. We're here to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on their businesses, to share lessons learned, as well as to answer any questions that you may have at the end of our discussion. And now I'd like to introduce our panel. Michelle Banks is the president of ASID, the Missouri East chapter. Kevin Kenny is president and CEO of KDR Designer Showrooms. Mark McClanahan is the president of Mosby Building Arts. Kimberly Ruther is an interior designer and the owner of K Designs. Sally Evans is the owner and marketing director of Hot House Digital. And Wendy Dorton is a lighting specialist in outside sales at Metro Lighting. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. My first question for the panel is, what was the immediate impact of the pandemic on your business? And how have you seen this change as a result of the easing of restrictions? Michelle, why don't you take a stab at that?
Sure. Well, at first our call volume basically cut in half for probably the first 2 to 3 weeks. But we had already fortuitously started the process of shifting our business model to the health and well-being of our clients back in December. And in that time, I became well certified, and I won't go into much detail on that because I'm assuming most of the people watching are going to know what well is. But we are applying that towards the residential market. And the part that's relevant for COVID is that our indoor air quality is 5 times more polluted than the most polluted cities, and that includes our homes, our businesses, and everything. So our hand was sort of forced when all of this started to start offering non-toxic building materials, low VOC finishes, all that kind of stuff, because all of those things weaken your health and make you more susceptible to COVID. So even though our call volume had gotten cut in half, we started closing more business just by explaining that sort of stuff. So, and as well as doing the usual protections with all of our workers. They're wearing masks when they go into clients' homes. They're sanitizing when they leave, high-touch surfaces, that kind of thing. So we managed to sustain our business because of that. But as soon as this was over with, all of the clients that had been put on hold, which was about half of our clients, suddenly want things done now. And we're getting more new clients in. And the call volume has actually gone up from where it was before COVID. So I'm assuming that people were sitting at home all the time and came up with a huge list of projects that needed to be done. So we're benefiting from that.
That's great. I'm curious, in your role as the president of the Missouri chapter of ASID, were you receiving calls from designers? And I'm curious to know what their concerns were in the beginning.
Right. Well, the fear obviously was of the unknown. We didn't know what was going to happen. This is a lot different than 2008, which most of us had lived through already. And fears about how we were going to work. But I've got to say the industry really stepped up, and they were putting on all kinds of webinars to tell us what to do, what not to do, that kind of stuff. So I think we'd all calmed down within about 3 or 4 weeks of it going on. But there's always the concern about bringing in clients. So everybody changed their focus to that, and we had the time to do it too. So yeah.
Great. Who would like to go next? Sally, how about you? What can you tell us about your experience as a marketing professional?
Well, a lot of the clients that I work with in the design realm, we're working with outdoor spaces. So that's, like designs on the outside of the home, which fortunately was deemed necessary and essential when you're talking about construction. And a lot of the homeowners, I think, felt like it was safe to continue on those projects because they were outside. You could still meet in person, maintain that physical, 6-foot distances that they were recommending at the very beginning. And then, just really what became a big focus was kind of transitioning from like marketing messaging to really like safety protocols and letting people know that this is the new way that we're going to do business to, make sure that everyone stays safe, but we can continue to work.
Terrific. Mark, how about you?
Well, similar to what Michelle said, our call volume cut in half pretty much right away. We typically during this time of year would get about 50 calls a week, and so we dropped down to about 25 calls a week, and that lasted for about 4 weeks. Also at the time we had about 70 projects in process, and fortunately it was kind of odd. Only about 6 or 7 clients didn't want us to continue working. Everybody else wanted us to continue working. And since we're a full service company, we do interior and exterior work. We ended up spinning back around, similar to what Michelle said. Now we've got more calls than we could handle, which is a good problem to have. It's kind of surreal considering the magnitude of what's happening in our country. But at the same time, we're just doing everything we can to service our clients. And then also what Sally was saying regarding the safety protocols, we certainly had to pivot pretty quickly. We created a work from home plan right out of the gate, and we're still working from home. As far as the office, we have about 40 people in the office, so they're all working from home, but we certainly took advantage of the technology of Zoom and Microsoft Teams, FaceTime. Thank God all that was in place. And so we pivoted pretty quickly, and we're doing well right now.
That's good to hear. Kevin, how about you? You run and operate 3 designer showrooms in the Midwest region. What was it like for you in those early days?
Well, it was a lot of fun. It was, it changed every day. I mean, we were navigating, I believe, 9 or 10 different forms of government where it was either city, county, or state. Our showroom in Minneapolis, our showroom in Kansas City, our showroom in St. Louis, just a lot of really crazy things that you would never anticipate. We had employees locked down on the Illinois side, where it was much more stringent. So there was a lot of obstacles to overcome. We were fortunate in that just by luck, we had recently done a major upgrade of our communication systems where we went to a cloud-based voice over IP phone system. We had just upgraded all of our Wi-Fi in our showrooms. So we had a few people in the showrooms doing virtual presentations. We had people working from home, excuse me, but the appearance is that they were working from their desktop at KDR because they could text message, they could do any form of communication from home. In our business, that only goes so far because we're kind of a touch feel and see luxury business. And we had a lot of orders in the pipeline, a tremendous backlog of orders because business was so strong going into March. And that I think we talk about that a little later on here about the impact on the industry and so on. But surprisingly, we continued to do a tremendous amount of business during the lockdown period where our showrooms were closed for 2 months. So really, we were very fortunate. We're still navigating things a little bit. We're in a design center in Minneapolis. So we work in conjunction with the building there. Here in St. Louis, I own the design center here. I think we all, admit that whether it's customers, whether it's employees, whether it's vendors, there's just different levels of concern and different levels of protection. So I don't think we've found any 100% blanket that makes everybody feel great. But we're back to business, and business is very strong. So we're lucky.
Great. Wendy, what can you tell us?
Well, at Metro Lighting, like a lot of businesses, we started off laying off and furloughing a lot of employees. Fortunately for us though, the lighting and electrical business is deemed essential and kind of goes hand in hand with the building and construction business as well. So We were able to keep our doors open. However, we did shut down. We have 6 Metro St. Louis showrooms. We had to shut down 2 just temporarily. But we did, put actions into place, wearing face masks, gloves, put up plexiglass screens when people would come in and purchase set. But basically, we were just down to skeleton crews, limited our hours, and we also encouraged people to call ahead so that we didn't have too many people in the showroom, and also, do virtual appointments via Zoom and FaceTime and whatever. So
Great. And Kimberly, how about you and your design business? What was that like in the first few weeks?
I feel really, my first instinct was just to reach out to my clients and see how they were doing, what their comfort level was. I had several renovation projects that I was working on, 2 of which were for a condo, and the condo association actually shut everything down and actually still has not opened it. One of my clients decided to buy another condo somewhere else because they were going to do a gut renovation, and didn't want to deal with it in the midst of everything. We were supposed to start literally the week after we all shut down. So, and then the other clients just anxiously waiting to get their master bathroom redone, but they won't they won't allow construction to happen. My other client that we were doing a renovation for, she wanted to put it on hold. Well, not on hold, but just not have any meetings in person, and kind of just do some planning and behind the scenes work while we kind of figure this out. And she and her family have been just dealing with a lot of stuff going on anyways. But then I had another client that was working on her outdoor space. And she needed outdoor furniture and needed some outdoor stuff. So we worked on that. And then I had another client that decided to start building her dream home. So we are working on, which didn't think, I thought she might be one of the people that would, wait a little bit and see where this is at. But she's like, nope, let's do it. We have the property. So we've been working on that. So I've been fortunate. I haven't had any in-person client meetings yet. I've had in-person contractor meetings, but a lot of Zoom calls and conference calls with clients and things like that. But and then in addition, Michelle and I actually both, I already was really interested in the well building standard, and so that's something that I really want to put in place. So I've been studying. I need to pass the test still, but really excited to integrate some of those concepts and everything into these new projects. So
terrific. Well, certainly we have a range of experiences. I'd like us to play Monday morning quarterback for a minute here. If you, thinking about your experiences, what might you do differently if you knew what you know now? Mark?
Oh, sure. Throw me out there first. Oh, wow. That's a tough question. I felt like we did a lot of things right. Because we were trying to, take it day by day.
Was there a technology, for example, that you might have invested in beforehand that, proved to be incredibly helpful to you? Something like that.
I will say we certainly, one of the things that we implemented during this process that will remain is we implemented DocuSign into our CRM system. So any contracts or selections or allowances or anything like that, that's all done electronically, long distance now. Though we did it here and there before, now we pretty much virtually offer it all the time. So I would say of the contracts that we've sold, half of them now are probably sold through DocuSign, and we don't necessarily have to be in person. So that's probably one thing that definitely changed. We've been offering, it's interesting, we've been offering first appointments virtually, to all of our clients. The thing that was surprising, I will tell you, is that 95% of the people still want to meet with us on the first appointment in person. We've done a few virtual appointments. So we were moving really hard towards, okay, we got to be ready for first appointments. That the homeowners are going to want us in. But I was really shocked, pleasantly shocked, that people still wanted to see us in person on the first meetings. subsequent meetings, I think they felt more comfortable with, but maybe the in-person connection was really important to them. So that's one of the things that we experienced. So differently, I may not pushed as hard to make, set up the virtual appointment, but we're still utilizing it. So that's probably the lesson learned on that.
So you're seeing that in-person interaction is still really important. For the designers in the group, I'm wondering though how virtual design might be sped up as a result of the public health crisis, or if you're seeing, as Mark pointed out, that really clients and homeowners have come to rely on that in-person intimate connection that's made with designers and other manufacturers. What can you tell us?
Well, I can start. I really have not had, it really just depends upon the client. I have clients that are older that don't want me in their home. And so we do everything over Zoom, and that really hasn't been a problem. I'll send fabric samples to them as well as, and I'll have them on my end and we'll just kind of play with it from there. And of course, a lot of it we can do over Zoom and Basecamp that we've already been using anyway. But there are clients that do want to see everything in person and continue on, and it really just depends upon their comfort level.
Okay. Kimberly, how about you? What did
So I've done projects over the years out of state, and so I actually used to use Skype a lot. And showing fabrics through Skype is actually, the project that I worked on that's behind me actually is something that we did remotely. The client was living in Florida at the time when we were working on the condo. So it actually is something, and a lot of my clients are very tech savvy and just do a lot of texting and digital presentations and things like that. So that's definitely a technology, and having Zoom now is just an add-on, to that, but it's really helpful.
Okay, interesting, great. Sally, what can you tell us about the importance of communication during challenging times? I think sometimes designers or other business owners might feel like, maybe this isn't the right time to reach out to my client. I'm going to give that person some time and some space. As a marketing professional, what do you think about that? Do you feel like actually a little bit more communication is important? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people got these different messages from companies sending out, their COVID policies or their changes, and even like changes to that as different health protocols were released, or, like as a business might have adapted and come up with the new way of working. With the companies that I work with, it kind of transitioned from like the safety and clarity focus. So it was creating signage and then maybe even documents. Like one of the most interesting things I had to work on was commute letters. So to make sure that essential staff, if they did run into issues, that that they had this documentation that would just kind of make sure that everyone was on the same page in case there were issues with a construction project. And then just making sure there was that client aspect of that, but then also the internal team. So making sure that everyone had at least some kind of guideline that was considered business standards, instead of maybe like what your own personal safety health assessment might be. And then from a marketing standpoint, it did kind of start to become, I think, having like some sensitivity towards people's own if they're having like their own stress or these other factors that are just kind of you didn't really want to over market there like right at the beginning, because there was just so much going on. And I think even as a company, we're all just dealing with how to come up with this information and get it on the website, updating all of your digital platforms. So kind of just getting that clarity first, and then starting to maybe think about like how that might turn into helping your clients. So like creating an at-home sanctuary, like the staycation idea. So like making, doing home improvements that you might be investing in instead of a vacation that got canceled, or, these different kind of elements that go into people staying at home more and how, we can help them enjoy that more, whether, it's a stay-at-home forced measure or not.
Okay, interesting. And Wendy, what are clients asking for right now in terms of lighting needs? Is it focused on the interiors, the exteriors? What are you hearing?
Well, believe it or not, I thought everything was going to come to a screeching halt, but happily that didn't happen. A lot of designers, when their projects were put on hold, decided to take care of their projects, their personal projects at home, like their studio spaces, their own homes, etc. So, and there was also a big jump in task lighting as well as decorative lighting, because designers are creative people. So when this happened, a lot of the ones I talked to were able to refocus on what's relevant. So say one of their clients said, let's hold off on the kitchen project right now. And then the designer would come back and say, well, I know you're working. How about we shift our thinking to a home office? Because, most homes are only suited for one office, home office, but when two people need it, you need to get creative. And then also when those same clients have kids at home, they were proposing in-home classrooms and study areas. And as Sally mentioned, outdoor living spaces have become quite a popular project to work on as well. So interior, exterior, ceiling fans, lighting, all that kind of thing for those doing staycations now.
Interesting. And Kevin, how about you at the designer showrooms? What do you see clients and designers requesting from you?
Well, I think there's quite it's the same variety. I mean, it's fabrics and furniture and, window covering products, wall covering and so on. I think as the projects opened back up, unlike 08 and 09 when projects just disappeared, contractors disappeared, all of that. This was different in that people put temporary holds on everything. Some people did feel that it was the end of the world, and others felt this was temporary. Let's see what happens. So our demand for product hasn't really shifted a whole lot. I think the people coming into the showrooms, we're just trying to be respectful of their needs. So I'm not requiring our staff to wear masks, but if we have designers that are working with a staff member, we make it very clear in our policies they can request that staff member to wear a mask. We are offering private conference rooms, and those have been extremely popular, where designers can come in and have client meetings. And my theory has been all along is that our showrooms, and probably most people on here and people at the design center here, we're not heavily doused with retail traffic. And we have a particular demographic that COVID hotspots are not generating our kind of traffic that comes in here. You had senior living facilities and so on that were really hammered by this, this virus. So my concern has been more, as this has evolved, that we respect people's wishes for their level of concern. And we've been very successful with that. We took a marketing direction. I was listening to Sally that I kind of did a big U-turn when this first started and really tried to connect from a people standpoint rather than our traditional marketing of product standpoint. And I had to kind of step up myself and lead the way for our employees and communicate with our customers through our social media platforms and our digital platforms. And I think it was very rewarding for us. I mean, we track our engagements and our analytics and so on. And it's interesting that the people-to-people portion of our marketing is really what connected, during a time of crisis, reassurance and, hey, we're all going to make it through this. We're all going to be around. So, yeah, and I'm an optimist by nature. So.
Yes, it's a good time to be an optimist.
It is, yes.
Mark, I know that you're active in various groups and committees on a national level. What sort of insights can you give to us about leveraging peer groups in order to get through these challenging times?
That's a good question. I've been involved in peer groups for years, and those peer groups at that time, or even now, really used just to learn some best practices, kind of understanding, how people succeeded, what made them succeed, and also learn from people's mistakes and, how to avoid those types of mistakes. When the pandemic hit, that amped up pretty quick. I belong to 3 different peer groups, a local one and 2 national ones. In all of those peer groups, we started meeting almost weekly, starting in March, and we did that for 5 or 6 weeks. We met weekly, and we would just use that as a sounding board to say, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm seeing. And it was really eye-opening to learn some of the different dynamics other companies were dealing with. Some of the companies were, I think Kevin was mentioning this before, which is some of the companies were just shut down completely and had to lay off, hundreds of people. And we were, deemed essential in St. Louis, which was, so we were learning about how people were dealing with extreme shutdowns to the point where we were allowed to continue to work. So I guess my advice for anybody who's watching this is that I would, if you're not involved in a peer group, I would definitely get involved in one. ASID is a really great one. I know, Michelle and Kimberly have a lot of experience with that. So I would just recommend using your peer groups to really learn how to navigate. The other thing it does is, I think what I mentioned is it puts things in perspective. So there's a stress release aspect to it as well. I guess depending on how your situation was. I certainly ended up feeling really grateful for the situation we were in. So that's how I've used peer groups.
Terrific. And Michelle, what can you share with our audience members about opportunities to get involved with groups or boards through ASID?
There are plenty of opportunities available, and all you have to do is go on to moe.asid.org and get in touch with one of us, and we can get you involved in all of this.
Terrific, thank you. And so one last question before we go to questions from our audience members. And this is really for anyone who wants to tackle it. As we think about the future, and there is a bit of an unknown in terms of where we're headed and whether there will be additional lockdowns and so forth, what are you doing now to prepare for that? Who would like to take that one on?
I'll go.
Great.
So at Metro Lighting, at least we know now how to prioritize and open up our channels of communication. You talked about, or several of the panelists talked about incoming phone volume. Well, ours has reversed. We're calling customers and reassuring them. And I think, if this happens in a big way again, that might be one of the first things we do, is just let them know everything's okay. Here's what we're putting in place. Also not stockpiling toilet paper, but the necessary things, masks and gloves, just things we need to keep carrying on.
Perfect. Great. Anyone else? Kevin.
Well, I've thought long and hard about it, Veronica, but I don't know what you can do to prepare for something, again, that's still unknown. And I think what we will see is that our government will be better prepared on a federal, state, and local level. Our medical industry will be better prepared. And I am really, really hopeful. I have a lot of physicians in my family and a couple of scientists that are heavily involved in the research with this. I'm very confident we're going to see a vaccine. So, with all that said and all that in place, I think that just like restaurants and other buildings. I actually flew on an airplane 10 days ago, and I felt safer on that I felt safer on that flight than I did in January, you know, in the middle of flu season, because everything was disinfected like 2 or 3 times. Everybody had masks on. I think that we've been well educated in something we never wanted to be educated in. And I don't think that we will ever see a shutdown of our economy like we just saw. Regardless if there is, quote, round 2 or whatever, you're not going to see a complete shutdown of the economy. It is not sustainable. So I think we all just have to be smart, keep our employees safe, and you know, be precautious, and hope our governments have gotten a little smarter along the way here too.
And I'd like to add to that too. A lot of employees, I guess it really depends on whether you had children at home or not, but a lot of employees actually felt they were more productive. I did as well, because we weren't being interrupted all the time by our coworkers and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot less stressful to work from home. So I think there are actually a lot of benefits to it. This is what we're hearing nationwide as well. So I think there will be a lot of companies that will start offering work at home ability, but at the same time, you know, we miss the camaraderie and the social, you know, aspect of working with other people. So I think we're going to end up finding a balance after all of this.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to go to one of our questions here. This question is, because we're all spending so much time at home, is there anything the design pros are now wanting to change about their own residences? COVID-19 makes me want to have a backyard oasis for a change of scenery after sitting in my home office all day. How about you? Kimberly?
Agreed. I definitely wish I had an outdoor space. I do not. So that's something that I would love to make happen in the next year.
Michelle?
Well, I have the outdoor oasis. My mom actually works for the botanical garden, so my backyard is fantastic. But yeah, I really don't have anything to add. I think I was already there.
Kimberly, were you going to say something in addition?
Oh, I was just going to say, hi to Nisha, because she posted something in the chat.
Great. Sally, how about you? Are you thinking a little bit more about your own space at home and how you might want to change that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. The house that I live in is over 100 years old, so it kind of has some of the, you know, charm that could always use some renovating and touches. And then we actually just worked on putting a new raised garden bed in the back, just to, you know, hopefully add some plants to create some shade and just, you know, add a little bit more of like a backyard feel to an otherwise urban area. And then really focusing that on some native plants, because I'm hoping to bring in, you know, some butterflies and just like attract some of the pollinators that'll just make it feel that much more not quite so urban.
Right.
So yeah, been
That's terrific.
slowly working on stuff.
And Mark, you see a lot of homes and a lot of homeowners with different styles of houses in the St. Louis area. What are you thinking about for your personal residence, if anything?
That's interesting. More classrooms. I have 3 daughters in college and a wife who's a teacher. And so for the second half of this spring semester, they were all, 4 of them were in the house trying to do schoolwork and on Zoom meetings all at the same time. We didn't have enough space for them. So I will tell you that we have a decent sized house. It's not huge by any means, but if everybody's in a meeting that they need to have privacy, besides bedrooms, that was a little challenging. And I'll tell you just, so maybe an addition, but I don't know. We also have a pool, so we're waiting for the pool to open. So that's been really fortunate. And I will just tell you that I will never have a house without a pool again because of how this has really helped us out through this. And then I'd just like to add that is probably one of the most calls we've been getting as a business is related to this. People want additions, they want their basements done, garage additions. So I think that the having more privacy and more escape places in the house to escape from each other because everybody got thrown together. So that's kind of what I was experiencing.
Cool. Kevin, how about you?
Well, it's funny that you should ask, Veronica, because my wife and I do not have any children left at home. And we were very thankful repeatedly that we didn't, because of stories I hear from employees, the stories we hear from, others, young mothers at home trying to be moms and trying to work and trying to educate children. But we have way too much house. We've decided not to downsize. It's too much hassle. We have a home in Arizona where we spend a lot of time. And let's just say this has given my wife way too much time to scrutinize everything. We just completed, it's funny, you talk about the outdoor areas. To me, the outdoor season in St. Louis is very small. It's either too hot or too cold. And just completed a replacement deck on our home that overlooks the pool. And I have to admit that my wife did a great job. It's beautiful. It's really great outdoors. And believe it or not, we have lovely outdoor furniture on that deck.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, well, I usually get the leftovers. It was outdoor furniture that was on our showroom floor, and it'd been there for a couple of years. And I'm like, oh, maybe my wife will go for this, and she did. But yeah, everything turned out great. We find ourselves spending more time out there. The botanical gardens is funny. The first year I planted, I didn't know if we were going to have food, so I planted tomatoes and peppers into pots, large organic fabric pots with organic soil and organic plants. So they're actually alive and they have little tomatoes on them. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Great. We have another question here. Do you think this will cause people to shy away from the open concept to give each family member more personal space? Wendy, what do you think about that? You think this will make people want the more traditional architecture that we see in St. Louis?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Even with open concept, everybody has pretty much their own bedroom space. Maybe thinking about adding a study or classroom space to each bedroom. A lot of them have, desks where school-age kids can work at, but maybe just adding elements like that. I hope not, because I love the open concept. So maybe there's just a way to work around it.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Well, unless anyone has anything that they'd like to add, I want to thank all of you for being here this afternoon. I think this was a great conversation, and thank you again, and stay well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.